Welcome to the Dream, Plan, Start, Grow podcast hosted by Allison Turner. In each episode, we interview real, everyday entrepreneurs to learn how they got their start, what challenges they faced and overcame when starting the business, and what successes each has had. Welcome to the Dream, Plan, Start, Grow show. My name is Allison Turner. I am your host. The purpose of this show is really to showcase other entrepreneurs and how they got their start. You know, what challenges they had, what successes they had early on, and what they might do differently had they had the experience. Today I have with me Tina Pugliese of Pugliese Public Relations. So I know your business currently, and I know the model of your business currently, but this business has been around for how many years now?
20 years.
20 years.
Yeah.
And how long have you been in South Florida with the business?
Well, since 2004, but before that I was in Washington, D.C.
Okay. So when you started the business, I assume you started then in Washington, D.C.?
Yes, I did.
And what did the business look like at that point in time?
Well, Allison, it's really funny because I was working with a small business investment company and it was really boring numbers and we were just borrowing money from the SBA and giving it out to small businesses. And the 4 partners were involved. And one day, one of the partners, who was a developer in Washington, D.C., came up to me and said, I'd really like you to do my public relations. And I said, well, I'd be happy to, but I don't know what you're talking about. I had no idea what it was. And he says, well, I just want you to get me a squib in the Washington Post once in a while. And I thought about it, and I resigned my job, and I started the Pugliese Group. And he was my first client. And I worked with him, and he introduced me to other businesses in Washington, D.C. area. And before I know it, a year went by and I had this business that I knew nothing about. Now, I don't recommend starting a business that you don't know anything about, folks. But the bottom line is I did this and I got squibs in the Washington Post, but not only squibs, I got full stories.
Wow.
So obviously but during that time, it's not like I was just doing this off the top of my head. I read everything I could read on public relations. I read how to do news releases. I read how to do everything. And 1 year into my 1 year anniversary, I treated myself to a course in New York City, a 2-day course by a major organization on public relations. And lo and behold, after 2 days, intensively, 2 8-hour days, I was actually doing it right. I thought,
wow. Only took 2 days.
No, I had been doing it for a year, but it took 2 days to realize that I'd been doing it right, which was great. So I came back, I was all confident and grew the business. And then at a certain point, I thought, okay, I'm really, had people approaching me, other agencies saying, well, we'll buy your business and your clients. Da, da, da. So I sold the business.
Oh.
However, I had a non-compete clause. And according to that clause, I could not work for another PR firm or start another PR firm for several years. And I thought, well, I could retire. I was awfully young, but I could retire. And I thought, well, I can't do this. But they didn't say I couldn't go to work for another organization as a PR director. So I got a job as a PR director of a large national organization, a nonprofit. And I worked doing that for years. And then when I moved down to Florida, I had a position as PR director for a large national education association. Okay. And I had worked with them on this national education campaign with national sponsors. And they said, look, you started this with them. You can't just leave us. You've got to finish we can't just give it to somebody else. So they gave me an 18-month contract when I moved to Florida. And for 18 months, I'm doing this national campaign remotely. This is before COVID. So this was pretty good to be doing that there. And I worked on that. And then I'm coming to the end of that contract. And I thought, now what am I going to do? Now, I still had DC clients that would fly me up there to do media training. And these were national organizations. They'd bring in their boards, their leadership, and I would train them how to work with the media. And that went on for 10 years down here while I was down here. But so what am I going to do? So I thought, well, I'm going to just find local clients. And I started going around. And to my surprise, I realized they don't pay Washington, D.C. prices. Hello. No. So I thought, no, this is not going to work. They won't even pay me a quarter of what I would get per hour in Washington, D.C. How is this going to work? So I created this package especially for small and medium-sized businesses. And it was a PR subscription program. And for like $99 a month, any business could get my services. I could write a news release for them. I could have a meeting with them. There's a lot of details in it, and I would explain that to the client. But all of a sudden, I had this following down here, as well as my business in D.C. With the big clients. So that's how it happened. I'm not recommending you just start off and just throw your hat in the ring and then just do it. But it worked for me. Of course, PR is not brain surgery, so it wasn't like I was doing something that required a lot of background. But I did go to college, and I was a poli-sci major, so I knew how to write. That's important, the writing skill.
Yeah, no, definitely. That's definitely a big piece of PR. If you don't know how to write, then we got a big problem.
Yeah.
So Pugliese Group, or what was it?
It's a Pugliese Group in Washington.
Okay. So the one you sold, how long did you actually have that before you sold it?
10 years.
But did some of those clients then decide to leave that and come with you anyway?
Wasn't supposed to be like that.
Because I know you had that non-compete.
No.
So you didn't actively seek them out, which you couldn't, obviously.
No.
But
if they resigned the account with a new PR firm, that was different. But I still didn't like to do that because it made me feel guilty that they wanted to come with me as a person, because I was the person behind the name behind the company. Mm-hmm. So I had to be very careful, because I did not want to wind up with a lawsuit about, you've got this non-complete and look what you did. You took 3 of our clients. So didn't want to do that.
So Pugliese Public Relations down here has been in business how long?
Since 2004.
Okay. All right. Perfect. And so you pivoted pretty quickly, it sounds like, when you figured out that people aren't going to pay Washington, D.C. rates down here for PR, especially in the Delray Beach. I know the surrounding area where we are is pretty small business. I mean, Delray Beach, most of the businesses are 4 employees or less. And obviously if you go to Miami or Fort Lauderdale or West Palm Beach, then you have a few more bigger businesses, but still not necessarily the big, huge businesses that you might find in Washington, D.C.
Well, one of the things I did when I first moved down here was join the Chamber of Commerce, the Delray Chamber of Commerce. And that's, I recommend doing that, because in Virginia, I was with the Alexandria Chamber of Commerce. Okay. So I think that's a very important group to belong to wherever you're located. So I joined the Delray Chamber and would go to the meetings and meet people. And I was so shocked to hear, before I did my final public relations subscription package, well, what do you do, Tina? And I do public relations. Oh, that's nice. I can't afford it. What do you mean you can't afford it? Well, I'm sorry. And I said, every business should have it. It's so important. Marketing, publicity, public relations. It's very important for a business. How do you get the word out? Well, I buy advertising. And I said, well, that's really expensive.
Yeah,
I said, do you
afford that?
I said, that's really expensive.
Right.
Do you have a clue how much, how much less PR would cost versus advertising? Well, no, but I can't afford a PR firm. And of course, they're talking about the $3,000 a month retainer firms that these little organizations were asked to pay. That's not going to work for them. They can't afford $3,000. They can't afford $1,000 a month. So it's like, I did all this research and I interviewed a lot of people, and I had one-on-ones with all these people that I was meeting, and I'm hearing the same thing. We can't afford it.
Right.
And that's how I made the turn.
Yeah. I mean, that's interesting because I think, the ability to change a business, and obviously you started a different business versus like changing an existing one, but obviously you were still in PR in general, but you have to change with how times change, or how, in your case, the location changed and people aren't going to pay those same prices. And I think, in my business, in the digital marketing realm, obviously things change quickly. How has your business changed from a digital side? Because I know probably when you had the original one back, whenever that was, for 10 years, it was much different because the internet wasn't such a big player at that point.
Yeah. When I was working for one of the national organizations and I had my PR budget to send out news releases was enormous because we had to print the news releases. We had to stuff them into envelopes.
Oh, wow.
We had to mail them first class. And I had hundreds because it was a national organization. So we had to hit national media outlets. And I'm thinking, now it is so different because I write a news release, have the client approve it, push a button, and it goes out to all the key media that client wants it to go to. So I, for one thing, it's a whole lot less expensive, which is another thing why you don't have to charge $3,000 a month. I'm not paying for those auxiliary charges to actually physically get a piece of paper out there. Plus, they don't want a piece of paper anyway. It's easier to do it this way. They look it, they read it, they see if they decide it, or the headline, if they want it, boom, either delete it or save it.
Yeah. And what's the benefit of public relations for a business?
Well, first of all, you need to get the word out about your business on a regular basis. It has to be consistent.
Yeah.
And you can't, when I first went, the first national organization I went to work with after I sold my business, they were huge. They had 30,000 members. It was huge. And they would do a national campaign every 3 years. Mm-hmm. They would blow $100,000 with one of the large PR firms in Washington, and then they crawl into a hole for the next 3 years. And I got there and I said, you can't do that. Right. One program, $100,000, and then you disappear for 3 years. I said, you've got to be consistent. So when I started doing on a consistent basis, we were sending information out every week. Something was happening because they're doing national things. And, in Washington, we have the National Press Club there. So, of course, all the media are in that building. And I'll never forget, my first week at this organization, they had a communications director, but he wasn't the PR director. And he'd been there forever. Sweet guy, but he didn't know a thing about PR. I get there, welcome to the association. He said, now we want a news conference at the National Press Club Friday. And this is Monday. And I'm thinking, hello, a news conference. I don't even know the issues. I don't know the players. I mean, So I knew the media because I had to deal with the media in Washington anyway. So they weren't strangers to me. So I knew who they were. But I don't know how to put this thing together for an organization where I didn't even know what their mission was. And I think it was a test. And I pulled it off. I got everything set up at the National Press Club, 13th floor. I blasted the whole building with invitations to come to it. I figured out what the key was to get them up there, what the key message was. The place was packed. We had TV, we had print, we had everybody there. And it was like, okay, I passed that test. Now what are you going to do? Right. And I swear, they didn't want me there. Well, the president did. He wanted me there. But they didn't want me there because they were an old, 135-year-old organization. And this is the way we've always done it. So we're going to let this little newbie walk in here, and we're going to put her through the ringer. And I said, well, that's not going to happen. You want something, I'll give it to you. And from then on, it's like, whoa, okay, we'll do this.
Right. So you impressed them coming out of the gate.
Yeah, you've got to have results. And if somebody gives you an assignment, and I don't care what business you're in, a Mission Impossible assignment, find a way to do it. Because that way, they'll know that no matter what, you're going to come through for them.
Right, right. Now, you mentioned early in that conversation about consistency and having it consistent. I know, typically I always tell people in marketing, things have to be consistent, and you may not see, you may not see the results like right away, depending on what you're doing, whether it's marketing, PR, whatever you're doing, it's really the results over time. And the people that are still doing print advertising, which I still know a few people, that maybe advertise in some of the monthly magazines around here or quarterly magazines, it's not about, let me do an ad, like a full page ad one time and hope for the best.
This is going to flow in, right?
Yeah, exactly. It's really, let me see how I can do it for a consistent amount of time. And you have to know why you're doing it too. I mean, some people do it for the branding purposes, just to get their name consistently in the hands of that particular kind of clientele, whoever reads that magazine or whatever they're, publicizing in. But I think that consistency is a key piece, especially for new entrepreneurs, because I often see, working people in the business coaching arena, people start something and then they don't see the results in the first, 2 months or something. And they're like, oh, that's not the right thing. I got to go over here and do this. Or I got to go over here, and do this. So it's really staying the course. Where do you feel, or how long do you feel consistent? Is it every month? Is it every month for 12 months that they should see some kind of results, or what do you feel?
Well, it's hard to tell when the results are going to happen, because some of these businesses, they think what they're doing is very important.
Right.
And it is to them. But I always say, if I'm going to write a news release for you, for your company, I want you to ask yourself a question. Who cares? If you're the only one that cares, then why are we doing this? Okay? Because if I'm looking at it and I say, who cares? The reporter and the editor is going to look at it and say, I don't care. So when I meet with clients, and I have an hour meeting with my clients every month to kind of tease this information out of them, I'll walk into a meeting and I'll say, all right, what's new? And, oh, nothing's new. And I'm thinking, oh, come on, it's got to be something. And I start teasing and pulling. The next thing I know, I've got a page of things that I feel are prospective newsworthy items we do that all the time. It's no big deal. I said, well, maybe you do it all the time, but I'm an outsider looking in, and I think like a reporter, and I think this is newsworthy.
Right.
So that's the other thing. A lot of these small businesses do not realize that what they're doing, what benefits they're giving to their clients, patients, customers, whatever their audience is, they have no idea. They do it all the time, so it's no big deal to them. That's what a PR person can do for a business, is tease that information out and say, okay, you really are doing some amazing things here, and we'll get the word out. And it doesn't happen overnight, because I've got clients, I try to make it a 3-month subscription, because in 1 month, nothing's going to happen.
Right.
Because number one, when I work with them and I'll send out, one news release a month for 3 months, nothing might happen the first time. Then the second time, by the third time, first of all, the reporters and editors know me personally. So they'll say, okay, Tina Pugliese has just sent us a news release. We know she doesn't send us things that are not newsworthy, so let's at least read it. Whether or not it fits into what they are working on is another thing. Yeah. And then, well, I've never heard of this company, but she's promoting this company to us, and so let's read it. And then we've at least heard of the company. And then the next month, they've heard of the company again. And then the third, and then afterwards, they know the name of the company. You cannot expect a reporter or editor to just jump on this.
No.
If they've never heard of you before, how do they even know you're not a fly-by-night organization? And it's really amazing. I think one of the most unusual clients I got was, and it was just a one and done deal, because I did it as a favor for one of my other clients. It was this company that invented this toilet seat that glowed in the dark. So you didn't have to turn on the light when you went into the bathroom. Okay, so there was this glowing toilet seat. And I thought, all right, what am I going to do with this? Well, P.S., the Palm Beach Post, in their lifestyle section, a half-page article with a picture of this thing, a half-page article on this toilet seat. And my client was like nonplussed. They said, oh my God, look at this. Now, I could not have predicted that would have happened. I thought it was a pretty interesting story, not a half page in the Palm Beach Post. But I mean, it was like, there it was, this full color picture of this toilet seat. Toilet, yes. Yeah.
Wow.
So that was like really.
I haven't seen the glowing toilet. Now I got to go look for it.
Yeah, the glowing toilet, yeah.
It's kind of like a toilet night light, huh?
Yeah, it is, but it's all around. Yeah.
Interesting.
Yeah.
And how do you think Twitter has impacted the PR industry? Because I know I've heard, I shouldn't say I know, but a lot of reporters are on Twitter. Mm-hmm. And is that something you use in your business? Or is that something that, if you don't use, you would recommend people using? I know I saw some of the hurricane we just went through, Hurricane Ian, that I happened to be on Twitter because I was trying to find information from over there, that wasn't going on these the news channels. And I saw some people that would, post videos because they were over there. Mm-hmm. And so they would post videos of what was going on, and then they would tag, news channels, or tag, mm-hmm. the New York Times, or and obviously some of these stories some of these videos got picked up mm-hmm. from those channels.
Well, it depends on the reporter. Some of them do like Twitter. Some of them do not. And I belong to a PR group here in South Florida, and one of the things we do is that we schedule every month a meeting, and it's been Zoom for the last couple of years, but we schedule a meeting every month with a reporter or an editor or someone in the media to talk to the group. And we'll have like 30 people on this Zoom call. And we will ask them, how do you prefer to get your information? Okay, so some of them say, just send us an email. We want email. Do not send us this. Do not send us. So that's really great, because here we are, and they tell us, you PR people are our stringers now. And that's an old-fashioned term for when everything was print. But their staff has been cut so much that they don't have the resources to be able to do that. So we now have to be their eyes and ears and send them this. So we can use Twitter, we can use email, we can use Facebook, we can use whatever it is they want us to use. So they're the ones that tell us, and I have a whole diary of things that, this reporter wants it this way, this reporter wants it this way. So you really want to give them exactly what they want. Make their job easier. They'll love you for it.
Yeah.
And they'll appreciate it, because you're not wasting their time. And if I want something a certain way, send it to me that way.
Yeah.
So
you do use Twitter then?
Mm-hmm.
If they prefer.
If they do, yes.
Twitter, you just tweet and tag them on the tweet.
Mm-hmm. Yes.
Interesting. Yeah, because I go on Twitter every once in a while, and we have a Twitter account, but I don't probably use it the way it should be used, because I know you're supposed to tweet all the time, and I personally don't have the time to.
Well, with all the social media outlets that are out there, and you're supposed to do it like consistently, like every day you're supposed to do something.
Yeah.
But I don't know, with all of these social media outlets, I don't know how. You'd have to have and a lot of companies do have a person, that's their job.
Oh yeah.
And all they do is social media. Okay, that's totally separate from their PR person. So they've got the PR person who does one thing, and then they've got their social media person who does another thing. This is getting very compartmentalized now. With all of the technology that we've got going on, it's specialized and targeted, but it still has to be consistent.
Yeah.
You have to make sure your messages to all these outlets, especially if more than one person's handling them, are consistent. Otherwise, this one's saying one thing and this one's saying another thing, and that's not good.
Yeah, that doesn't work very well.
No.
But I think, you bring up a good point. Not only the consistency piece came up again, but I think, just like you said, the reporters want information a certain way. So whether it's email or Twitter or whatever they want, I think that's the same thing for a business with social media, is like they need to pick what social media platforms that, their ideal client or avatar is actually on versus, you don't have to have all the social media platforms out there, because there's a lot of them out there and they keep, inventing more of them.
And you keep diluting the message too, because
Right.
What if they only go to 1 and you're on 5 and then they don't see the rest of the information? And so I don't know. I think it all has to, find its level because I think people are jumping onto these bandwagons and that's fine. But every minute you come out, there's something new happening. And then you need to do this and this and this. And it's like, okay, how much can we do? And I know the reporters and editors I talk to, they're overwhelmed.
Yeah.
I mean, how many things can they look at to fill their pages or their online presence? How much can they possibly look at? It's just it's overwhelming for them.
Yeah. Yeah. So what's been your greatest challenge specifically with the business down in Florida? What's been your greatest challenge?
Well, again, it's just that the small to medium-sized businesses feel that they still don't believe they can afford to do this. And to try to get that message across, it's, or that they even need it. Okay, that's
Right.
the other thing. Well, I don't need that. That's like special.
Right.
And that's something that a big company will want, but I don't need that. I've got these ways of doing this, and word of mouth is good, but word of mouth is good.
Yeah.
And that's the way I get a lot of my business, through word of mouth. But there's other ways to do it.
Right. Right. No, I think, word of mouth's good, but what do you see? I guess the question is public relations. I think a lot of people don't understand public relations, because at least down here, and I can't speak for Washington, D.C. or like big cities, but I think down here where you do have that more entrepreneurial small business market, a lot of people don't understand what public relations is and how it can benefit them, because you don't hear it that often, or at least I don't hear it. And, being a small business owner, I don't, I hear it from you, but I don't hear it as a common strategy, like even from other marketing companies. And I get there, maybe they don't include PR. So unless they're like a marketing and PR agency, and have that included, like I don't really hear that term that often down here, versus you see the big public relations companies in bigger cities that clearly are getting those clients and customers.
Well, I think that people don't understand that when you read a publication or a newspaper, I love newspapers because I love the paper. Okay, I get
It's going out of style, you know that, right?
I know that, but I want the paper anyway. I like the paper. But when I read the newspaper, basically, unless it's weather related, crime related, or any other news story that gets in there, a lot of the articles in there are from PR companies.
Yeah.
And and even on TV, they say if it bleeds, it leads. Well, of course, they're going to talk about murders and mayhem and
Right.
storms and all this other stuff. But a lot of that stuff that goes into the media cauldron comes from public relations people. And I think that's what the public doesn't quite understand, is if there were no such thing as PR, all you'd be reading about is murder and mayhem. There would be nothing else except that.
Which is sometimes what I feel all we hear anyway.
That's murder and mayhem. Well,
Yeah.
that's what people like to
what
read about,
sells.
strangely enough. But yeah, so I think that public relations is something that is just an integral part of any business. It's not only PR, that's only part of the communications package. Communications is the overall umbrella. Under communications, you've got PR, publicity, marketing. You've got all those other things under communications. PR is specifically geared towards the media with your message. Marketing is a little bit different, using different outlets. Publicity, publicity is just getting your name out there.
Right.
Okay. So I do these workshops, and before COVID, I would do a live workshop at least once a month. And this is where I would talk about any of these subjects individually. So I'd have how to do your own public relations, how to do your own publicity, marketing on a shoestring, these kinds of things. And since COVID, I have not done them, and I don't feel that I could have done them Zoom workshops, but I personally need the interaction. When I do a workshop with 20 or 30 people and I do the presentation, but I also want interaction. I want feedback. I want them to role play. It's really hard to do that.
Yeah.
Online.
Well, a lot of people keep their cameras off, and then they may or may not be listening. And
yeah, they're having a cup of coffee in the kitchen. So they're paying no attention at all. So, but now that we're kind of opening up a little more, I think I'm going to start doing these live workshops, because I think that once you have any questions you have, you can do it yourself. I do the workshop and I give out a workbook with all the information. You can do it yourself. It's not brain surgery. It's public relations. So people can do it themselves, but they're either afraid, they don't have the time, or whatever their excuse might be. But it's really not that hard. It's common sense most of the time.
Yeah. And I know nowadays they have, you can pay for those online subscription things, where they can send it to multiple media outlets for you. Now, I think the challenge I see is a lot of those are more national outlets versus like your local, in our case, Palm Beach Post, Sun Sentinel, or like a magazine in the area or something like that. They're more national outlets, but I know those are options, but they don't cost. They typically cost, a fair amount of money too, to do those.
Yeah, they're expensive. And what happens is that an organization might use it one time, pay a couple $1,000s to blanket the country with a news release that they send out to targeted media outlets around the country. Again, why do you need, unless you're national, why do you need to do that?
Right.
Okay, if you're only in South Florida, then concentrate on the South Florida market. So I don't know. There are some that I use, and they are more targeted. You can get them for Florida. So if a client wants that, I'll say, okay, fine. We will send it out to your normal list, and then we will add this news release distribution service, which is what they are.
Yeah.
And so I don't know how much more they get out of that, but I guess if it makes them feel better, then we'll do that.
And have you seen any with the newspaper industry going to digital? Because I know you just talked about the feel of it and how some people still like that. But obviously we have a whole group of people that probably didn't even grow up with that now. Mm-hmm. And they grew up with the digital, being able to access all the stuff from your phone and all that wonderful stuff that we're in now. Do you feel that that's impacted? Because I could see, like when you're reading a newspaper, if you're flipping through it, you could see a story or a headline or something like that, versus if you're online. I know when I've had like a digital subscription to the Sun Sentinel, I could just search for something, if I'm looking for a specific article, or sometimes an article comes up because I have the app on my phone and it targets certain, things that I want, to see the news for. So all of a sudden I get a, news alert of whatever that is. And so I can just click on it and go read it. So do you find that's hurt your industry at all? Because, if it's something like, I know when you and I have worked together, I can't think what this, down in the Sun Sentinel, the little stories about business people or people, like you wouldn't necessarily see those in a digital edition. Mm-hmm. Like, do you feel that would hurt your industry at all? Or has hurt your industry?
No, I think you're right. I think newspapers in print form are going away, and they're hanging on by their fingernails. Yeah, and this has been going on for years. But they slowly but surely switched over to the digital market. They're trying to. I get these posts in the Sun Sentinel delivered every day, but I also have the subscription online, so I have both. But I prefer to go through the newspaper, because then I can look at the headline and boom, 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 boom. Otherwise, to go online and pour through a digital version of it. But again, you said there's a whole new generation. That's all they know. And that's fine.
Yeah.
But I think that the print media has been really panicking when all this happened with digital, and they've been gearing up and doing all kinds of special things to get everything electronic rather than the print. It's a lot less expensive.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, it costs a fortune to print these. I looked at my newspaper this morning. Do you know what a single copy of a newspaper costs? $4.50.
Yeah, that's during the week. Not even like the Sunday one, which is usually bigger.
$4.50 for a newspaper. I thought, whoa, because I pay whatever I pay quarterly.
Just cheaper.
And I thought, I didn't know the individual subscription. I figured maybe a couple of dollars. No, it wasn't. But no, the newspaper and magazine industries, they are trying to figure it out themselves. They're trying to figure out how to survive, how to make money, and how to work the advertising. Because if you read a print newspaper, the hard copy one, it's all ads. Ads. Yeah. You got a story this big in the corner, and then a page and 3/4 of ads. And where is that revenue going to come from online? How does that work?
Right.
So they've got a whole, challenge there to figure out how they get, a page and 3/4 worth of advertising onto a digital format with this one little tiny article of news. I don't know how they're going to do that.
Well, and that's kind of why I was asking you, if you're doing a, story that's not going to be a big headline article for a client, and it's more, highlighting them for something, and it goes in, whatever section on page 25, whatever, which again, if you flip through a paper, you would see. Mm-hmm. But if you're online, I mean, I've never flipped through like a paper online. I don't even know how you do that. But, I've never gone through a paper online. I've just either I've looked at like the headlines, or if there's a certain section I like to read, like the sports section or the city, state, or whatever it's called now. I go to those specific sections, but I don't necessarily go through all the sections if I'm going to go online. So do you feel like that's hurt your industry at all? Because obviously, you and like other people doing public relations have given them content, which they're still posting. And I guess the good thing is, like if someone would Google that person, then hopefully that article or whatever it is would come up eventually, but they wouldn't necessarily see it in the initial read of, if the Sun Sentinel comes out today and that's in there, people reading digital wouldn't necessarily see that.
Well, I think the print media industry is trying to work out all those problems that you're mentioning now. I don't think it's going to be a problem for PR at all. I don't think PR will ever go away. PR has been here for hundreds of years, and it's going to stay. It's just going to evolve.
Well, it's evolved. And that's what I was trying to see is has it evolved away from certain things?
And I think everybody's learning this together. Yeah. So we're PR people are sitting back, and we're meeting every month with all these editors and reporters, and they're saying that we need this, or whatever. Help us, please.
Right.
So we're their counterparts here out in the real world to help them, and they do want help. And so we will support them, and in return, they're supporting us. So we need public relations marketing. We need the whole communications package. It's important because the world is so complex now that how in the world do you get messages out at all? I mean, forget something promotional. How do you get messages out that are not distorted or incorrect?
Right.
So that's what we try to do in PR. And, I got my accreditation in public relations, APR, and there are only a very small number out of all the people who call themselves public relations people that have this APR. And that's because we had to go through a rigorous course. We had to take a written and an oral exam. It's like being a CPA. And we have certain ethics that we have to uphold in order to do this. So there might be people out there who just hang out a shingle and say that they do this, and they don't care how they get it done, and they don't care if they're sending out truth or fiction. but that's what this is all about, is that we've got to keep our reputation intact and not get it tarnished, and know that we are going to work with the media to make this thing, get through this crisis period. And I believe it's a crisis period because everything is happening at the speed of light.
Yeah.
It's just unbelievable. You never, you turn around and there it is, and something else has changed.
Yes, it has. So what's been your greatest success with your current company?
With my current company, I did an event for a client, and it was going to occur when we put it on the calendar. It was one of the only things there, and closer to the event, all of a sudden, a lot of other things popped up. Yes, it happens. However, we took every step to be able to get this event to come off and make it happen. And we got all the people they wanted there and more. Okay. And it was a success. And that's the thing, is you never know when you plan anything. No. Is what's going to happen. I mean, it happened in Washington all the time because of all the competition up there. I mean, we were not only competing with, we're competing with businesses down here, but in Washington, we're competing with the government, the Pentagon, the State Department, the White House. I mean, to show you what I did up in Washington, one event I did up there, it was a 50th anniversary for one of the largest caterers in Washington, D.C. And they were going to have a tented event, huge circus tents, on the Washington Mall. Now that's where that's, everybody knows the Washington Mall. It's not a shopping center. It's a big grassy area by the Washington Monument. And we had to get all kinds of permits from the city. And we had these huge tents, and we invited the entire diplomatic corps there, and it was black tie. And we had a limo with a connection to the national airport because we were going to release these balloons, these Mylar balloons with messages in them.
Oh, wow.
And we had to, when we released the balloons, we had to let the tower at Washington National know so that they wouldn't have any planes flying
up
balloons
at the same time. Huh?
Yeah, so we did that. And it was a success. It cost a fortune.
I'm sure.
A fortune. But it was such a success. The entire diplomatic corps was there, and the black ties and limos, and it was so elegant. It was just amazing. And so what we did as a follow-up to that, because of course we made every media outlet possible was there, and there were pictures of everything. But what we did as a post-event, we had sent these Mylar balloons up, and what we did was we wanted to find out how far they went. And these children in Nova Scotia found one of the balloons in their field and let us know. And we had another story out of that.
Oh, wow.
That the Mylar balloon wound up in Nova Scotia.
Nova Scotia.
Yeah. So anyway, that was like really a very successful event with all kinds of post-event publicity. It was great.
So you like to milk the publicity options?
Well, if you're doing something and it's interesting, and it was interesting, take pictures. Even down here when we meet with TV producers, what they do is they say, look, we can't be sending our reporters out for, every little event with camera or whatever. So you're going to have to help us. And they say, okay, use your iPhone, hold it horizontally, and then you can send us like 1-minute clips of things. And, just recently we had and this was another, really successful thing. One of my clients was having a groundbreaking in Delray, and I invited the print and electronic media. 2 TV reporters and cameras showed up. Whoa, hello. We made the 5 o'clock, 6 o'clock news that night on 2 TV stations, which was amazing.
Yeah. That's
amazing. And to be able to draw out 2 TV stations, and it was like a noon affair. It was like in the middle of the day.
Wow.
But, that was a great success as well.
I guess they saw the value of what you pitched.
Well, they had a story there, and I had all the interviews with whoever they wanted set up. So they met with the president of the organization, they met with the board members and all this stuff. So, yeah.
Right.
They got their
great.
story.
That's great.
Yeah.
So if you were going to tell like a new entrepreneur something, some kind of, tip or something, so not necessarily about public relations, but something you found when you started a business, maybe the original business, or that you've learned over the years that might help them, what would that be?
Well, first of all, you have no limitations. Okay, you can do whatever you set your mind to do. Learn everything you can about what you're doing. People would not go into business unless they had some kind of an expertise in it. At least you hope they wouldn't. I find that a lot of the entrepreneurs down here come from the Northeast, and they had positions of importance up there, and they come down here to rest, retire, whatever, but they get bored. And so they start up either another business or a consultancy or something like that. And that's good. But they're small and they don't know how to promote their business. They may have a really great engineering background where they could be an engineering consultant or something like that. But don't give up and learn everything you can. I mean, when I started my business, in Washington, all I wanted to do was get a squib in the Washington Post.
Right.
And I just read everything I could, and I got all these stories, and I had these big developers as clients. All of a sudden these big clients were on my doorstep. And it was like, wow, I didn't know I could do this.
Yeah.
And truly, when I started my first business, I didn't know a thing about it, but I learned. So no matter what you're doing, I tell anybody, no matter what you're doing or what you want to do, learn everything you can do about it, be the best you can be, and then you'll be successful.
So it's that education piece that
we
often talk about on these podcasts of like how important continuing to learn is too.
Exactly.
Not just, you learn initially, which you talked about at the very beginning, but it's also, as your industry changes or things shift, continuing to learn and improve yourself too, because I think that's the other key piece is making sure you as the owner of the business improves yourself to keep yourself, the mindset needs to be there, the health needs to be there, all those aspects that help you run a successful business has to be there as well.
Exactly. And you have to be willing to change. I feel like I have reinvented myself at least 3 times in my life. I've gotten to a wall and I have a choice. I can stop or I can continue. And if I can't continue on the same path I've been at, I've got to then reinvent myself and figure it out.
Right.
Some people, not a lot, but some people hit a wall and they throw their hands up and they say, I can't do this. I give up. You can't give up. You've got to continue. And this is another thing that I feel like I do in my business. When I meet with clients, I feel like their cheerleader. A rah-rah, and with the pom-poms and everything, I feel like I've got to keep them motivated.
Right.
And I'll walk out of a meeting, I'll be exhausted, okay, because I've just put everything I have into this meeting. And they're like pumped up and they say, oh, wow, this is great. I'm going to do all these things, and you got to keep them pumped up because otherwise they hit that wall again.
Yeah. Yeah. I think that's a key piece in entrepreneurship. And I see that even in the business coaching side of how critical that is of, either having, whether it's a coach, a mentor, accountability partner, or something that kind of, so they're not in it alone. Because I think a lot of people start businesses, either start as a solopreneur, or maybe they start with, a team of couple people, but they're the owner of the business. So they feel like they can't really share all their challenges and, misses or everything, they'll share the positives, but they don't share the negatives with their employees. And I think that's the challenge for someone starting a business is you have to keep going and keep that mindset up. And how do you do that?
Yeah, and that's important. When you start a business, you just got to do something to make sure you keep your energy level up.
Yeah.
And there's going to be a lot of disappointments. You're going to just get to the point where you say, what am I doing? I can't do this anymore. But that's not what you want to do. You do need a mentor or a cheerleader or somebody to just let you know, keep going. It's going to be okay. You're going to be successful at this. And just before your biggest success is going to probably be your lowest point in your mind as far as thinking, I can't do this. Yeah. And then you can.
Yeah, so true. So if anyone had any questions or maybe wanted to work with you from a PR side, you work I know you work obviously South Florida, but you work nationally as well, correct?
Yeah, I do.
So what's the best way to connect with you?
Well, you could go to my website, pugliecepr.com, or you can call my phone at 561-889-3575, or send me an email at tina@pugliecepr.com. Okay. And I answer everything. I'm fanatical about that. I do not let people just sit and wait.
Okay, great. But thank you very much for joining me today.
Thank you so much.
It's been great learning a little bit more about the DC side of things. I knew some of it, but there were other aspects I didn't know.
Yeah, thank you.
And thank you everyone for joining us on the Dream Plan Start Grow show. My name again is Allison Turner. If you have any questions for me, you can reach out through my website, dreamplanstartgrow.com. I do offer a 30-minute complimentary consultation on there. And you can also email me at success@dreamplanstartgrow.com. But thanks for joining us, and we will see you again next week. Thanks for tuning in to the Dream Plan Start Grow podcast with Allison Turner. If you like what you heard, make sure to subscribe and leave a review. Join the Dream Plan Start Grow community by following us on Facebook or Instagram @Dream Plan Start Grow. See you in the next episode.